The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect those of the ANA or its members. On today's episode of On Scope, you don't know what an insight is. But luckily, our guest, Stephani Estes of Goodway Group, does, and she's here to break it on down. Also, this week in ANA Magazine, what to do when your brand steps in it. All that next, On Scope. Holy moly, it's another episode of On Scope, the marketing podcast brought to you by the ANA and powered by Odyssey, a leading audio streaming platform. You can get your favorite podcasts, music, and entertainment on the Odyssey app. I am your host, Mike Berberich, and with me as always, Ryan Dinger, producer of On Scope. How you living, buddy?
I am doing great, Mike. I am stoked for today's episode, today's guest. It's going to be amazing.
It was too much fun. I thought we were going to get fined because it was too much fun.
Thankfully, that is not against the law yet.
Yes. But speaking of fun, Ryan, are you ready to jump into this week in ANA Magazine?
I am absolutely ready. Let's do it.
Here to discuss what's new in ANA Magazine, your friend and mine, Matthew Schwartz, Director of Content and Editorial Development at the ANA and editor of our fine publication. What is new in ANA Mag this week, my man?
Good to see you, Mike.
Likewise.
We have an article that dropped last week on an issue that many marketers will have to confront one time or another, which is how to rebuild your brand when it stumbles or loses its mojo for whatever reason. That puts the onus on marketers working closely with their PR counterparts to course correct and re-engage their audiences that may suddenly be skeptical about buying your products and services.
We're getting real on the mag this week. I love that because, there are all kinds of crises that brands can experience. And as the article deftly points out, the path to redemption's not always a straight one.
You got it, Mike. When consumer trust hangs in the balance and your credibility is at stake, marketers need to deploy multiple channels to ensure people know you're aware of the problem, of course, but more important, what are you going to do about it?
And while obviously proaction is paramount here, brands can get ahead of themselves as they develop a response strategy marketing-wise, can't they?
It's a crucial point. All too often, companies rush to launch an ad campaign to try and change the narrative before aligning things internally and getting all your employees on board. That can make the repositioning feel cosmetic rather than meaningful, according to Chris Cardetti, VP at Barclay OKRP, whose clients include Burger King and Motel 6.
So, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. You've got to square things internally, make sure that everybody's lockstep before you go announcing anything. But what's the next step once we're aligned internally?
Okay, and this step could separate success from failure in rehabilitating things, which is acknowledge what happened. What precisely happened? Don't go into euphemisms about what happened. Directly, be straight, be square. And even if that means peeling a little egg off your face, it needs to be done, and consumers can be very forgiving if you show contrition.
Very, very well said. And the article has an example that I think every brand manager can appreciate just as artificial intelligence starts to eat the world. Would you like to elaborate?
Yeah, we got a very nice illustration on how to hit the reset button. When Britain-based apparel company Gymshark relaunched its cult favorite Onks line earlier this year, bots overwhelmed the release and fans couldn't get access. Naturally, customers took out their frustration on social media. Resulting in a bona fide PR crisis. Now, to win back consumers, Gymshark canceled suspicious orders and responded to the situation on social media with humor, such as an Instagram post with a stark message for the humanless bots, quote, "All your orders are getting canceled," end quote. So by nuking so many orders paid by the bots' credit cards, Gymshark sacrificed short-term revenue to protect long-term credibility.
I love that. Putting your money where your mouth is about as powerful of a thing as you can possibly kind of do. But that was just one way they fortified the brand, correct?
That's right, Mike. In addition to taking the financial hit, Gymshark has continued to woo back and mark the return of the Onks collection through sparking Reddit conversations, for example. While Gymshark's CEO posted a long-form video on his YouTube channel extolling the benefits of the brand and pointing out some of the distinguishing characteristics compared to its rivals.
Very cool. And so this comeback strategy, if I understand correctly, it had a physical element to kind of really bring it to life. Is that correct?
That's correct. Not purely digital, which a lot of marketers can learn from now who are addicted to the algorithm, which is, in addition to the online play, part of the rebuilding process was Gymshark opening an immersive pop-up experience in Lower Manhattan following similar openings in London and Dubai. So in addition to ironing out the bot situation and getting rid of all those rogue bots, as it were, the company personalized the message both online and offline to bring folks back to the fold. And most important, and this comes back to an earlier point, they owned it. The company owned it from the get-go.
That is it. And honestly, that kind of puts a point on a recurring theme that's come up in the past few weeks here on the pod, is that great marketing in all of its form requires a little confidence, a little swagger, and being like, yeah, we misstepped. We didn't see this coming. That's on us. That is so powerful. And quite frankly, if you've got that character within your brand, that's something that you're going to earn a lot of goodwill with the folks in. So I love that, regardless of what caused the stumble. That really needs to be the ultimate muse when marketers develop a rebuilding strategy.
It's essential. And there's a through line between what you just said and consumers being forgiving and getting back on your best side. So this is with apologies to the immortal Ken Kesey, but that's the hard thought that marketers must deal with if they want to come out of the other side after a crisis and square things with their stakeholders. Again, that's the point where we need this hard thought. We're really going to go down this road and be square with people and be frank, or we're just going to try to wiggle around and hope that people just forget it. And again, people's memories are short, but they're not as short as they used to be amid social media.
Very, very well said. Well, as usual, A&A Magazine is here for our marketers when they need it most. I really appreciate you coming by the pod, Matthew. It's always a pleasure to have you here, buddy.
Thanks, Mike.
Now, for this article and more, as well as the A&A Magazine weekly quiz, go to ana.net/publications. And now, back to our show. Another great installment of This Week in A&A Magazine. Big hat tip to Matthew Schwartz. A lot of cool things in there to consider as a brand kind of making that bounce back, right?
Yes. Yeah. Matthew's always bringing the goods. And again, this was another great installment. But I have a question for you, Mike.
Hit me.
Do you have an example of a brand that revived itself, rebuilt itself, that you particularly loved?
You know, it was a very, very long time ago. This might actually be too far ago for some of our listeners, but it is a really great example nonetheless. Now, once upon a time, a little company called Netflix began their business by mailing rentals of DVDs out.
Yes. I loved this iteration of Netflix, by the way.
Me too.
I was a male Netflix subscriber. And it was great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Different time, though.
I have a stand-up routine that I'd never managed to get back. Sorry about that, Netflix. But what happened was, and I think everybody knows, that they are now in the streaming business.
Yeah, I think most people know that.
But when just want to make sure we're all up and awake here. But what they tried to do at first was they tried to splinter the business into a physical media delivery service and a digital streaming platform.
That's right. I completely forgot about this.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And nobody was having it.
Yes.
The public was very, very adamant that this was not what they wanted. And so what did the founders of Netflix do? Except for they themselves, sit down in front of a video, apologize, and say, we're not doing that anymore. and your subscription to Netflix covers everything.
Yeah.
And what could have been a really big misstep for a future giant in this industry became something that most people don't remember at all.
Like I said, I completely forgot that this had all happened. And I was a hardcore Netflix user at the time.
So, yeah. Masterclass, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Ryan, how about you?
Oh, well, I think I'm also going to show my age. We're getting up there, buddy.
You know.
But when I think of this, what comes to mind for me is an example from about 15 years ago, at least. So Domino's Pizza.
Oh, hell yeah.
You know, there was a time when we were growing up.
Yep.
You looked at like national pizza chain rankings. It was like Papa John's, Pizza Hut, Little Caesars, 3 Miles of Crap, Domino's. And Domino's in sometime in the mid 2000s, late 2000s came out with this whole campaign where they were like, look, we know you don't like our pizza. We know it's bad. We're redoing the recipe. And it was this whole thing where they acknowledged, like, we know what you think about us and we're making a change because of it. And I have to say, it really like went off really well, like without a hitch. And now, funny enough, I mean, we live in New York, so I don't eat national chain pizza too much.
Yeah.
But when I'm outside of the city, I'm looking for pizza. I got to tell you, Domino's is now my favorite of the national pizza chains. They completely revived their brand in a way that was just really smart and honest.
Yeah.
You know?
Worst to first, baby. That's how you do it.
Yes.
And then they had a rollout of like, okay, now there's a pizza tracker. Oh, now we're gonna have warm thing. Like they really showed their work.
Yeah.
And that's how you win.
Yeah.
That's really how you win. So
they showed their work. That's a interesting insight there, Mike.
Oh, you know what, Ryan? That actually is a great point. The insight that drove that entire Domino's campaign was invaluable.
Yeah.
But I think there's a problem in this industry.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I found one.
Uh-oh.
And that problem...
The first one.
Yes, exactly. So we finally did it, guys. But I think that there are a lot of marketers out there that know they need to use insights to drive great marketing, but might not actually know what an insight is.
That does sound like a problem, but hopefully we've got a solution.
Oh, do we have a solution? My friend and yours, Stephani Estes of the Goodway Group, is here to clarify everything. She has been a media executive for companies like Kramer, Krasselt, McCann, and Starcom MediaVest Group. As I said, today she is the Chief Media Officer at the Goodway Group, and she is here with, among other things, the best definition of an insight I have ever heard in my life. In fact, the definition's so good that it is inherently instructions on how marketers get to the insights that drive great campaigns. Oh my goodness. I hope you are hoping to have a fun day today because my conversation with Stephani is up next. All right, now. It's party time. We are here, A&A Studios, on Scope, the marketing podcast, and I have one of my favorite people in the marketing world with me.
Oh, thank you.
This, I've mentioned it a few times. I had a show for the A&A before this, and when I say this was one of the absolute best of our over 100 episodes, I am not blowing smoke. We've got Stephani Estes, Chief Media Officer of Goodway Group, in the building. Stephani, thank you so much for stopping by the pod.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having me, and what a kind intro.
I mean it. I remember just geeking out during that podcast. It was like borderline unprofessional, but I didn't care. I always tell our guests that I go from like selfish curiosity. That's kind of my barometer of what I think if other people are going to be interested in this.
Yeah.
And it was beside myself. We got to do it. So we got to run it back.
Yeah, let's run it back.
Okay. All right. So today we're talking about, and I absolutely love this kind of premise as a conversation. We're talking about bravery in a data-driven world. But before we get to that, we have to do your distinguishing of data, an observation, and an insight, because I've never heard it explained this good.
I'm glad to do that. I wish I could attribute it properly because I as much as I would love to sit here and take absolute full credit for it, it was in an insight training that I did that obviously stuck with me for many years. But so data are things you can observe. It's information that can be observed.
Mm-hmm.
A fact is something that can be drawn from that observation.
Yes.
And the insight starts to itch at why that fact or observation happened. So I'll give you an example, my favorite example that I use.
Mm-hmm.
So a fact or something you might observe might be that people tend to feed their dogs or their pets twice a day.
Mm-hmm.
An observation might be that they feed them during meal times. But then the insight is, well, why? And the thing that I love about that, usually this ends with, people feel bad when they're eating and they don't want to eat in front of their pets, so they feed them at the same time. But it could be that's just when people get the food out and they just are on that routine. The insight could have lots of different answers.
Mm-hmm.
It's really almost like a hypothesis as to why that observation is happening. But that, I think we stop so often at the observation.
Yes.
And we don't think about the so what or the now what. And I think going for that insight and taking a little bit of that hypothesis as to why that observation might be happening allows us to then figure out what should we do about that? How can we take advantage of that? How can we use that insight in our marketing?
Yes. And the reason I love this so very much, other than its clarity and its simplicity, is that I have long said that marketing innovation is just the scientific method.
Yes.
And it's so simple.
Yeah.
You can go back to that. That's the format. That's the blueprint. So I just absolutely love it. Had to do that.
Yeah.
So, if you're out there and you're wondering why data's never worked for you, it's because you've stopped at an observation.
I think so. Yes. You aren't really pushing it far enough to get something out of it.
Yep.
There's data and there's intelligence, right?
Yes.
And I think we don't go for that enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
Here. So typically in uncertain markets, you see the trend play out that most brands want to play it safe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I get the instinct, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But we know history, and those aren't the brands who really make it out and start thriving immediately after this uncertain time or a market downturn or a time of crisis or turmoil.
Yeah.
So how do marketers who might know this, who might see this as an opportunity, how do they engender the bravery to stay out there to the rest of the C-suite? Because, if you're looking at the P&L, that you need to make a really strong argument for that.
Oh, 100%. And right now, there are so many headwinds facing marketers, right? Supply chain issues, consumer confidence being at an all-time low. Those are things that are very real and can have a real impact on the overall budget, not just the marketing budget. And I think the more we can empower marketers to speak the language of the chief financial officer and really understand how to tell the story about how marketing can be a growth engine or even just keep the lights on during times of turmoil like what we're in right now. But I think when you are trying to build connections with a consumer group, especially one that maybe is struggling, you want to think about what are going beyond those observations into understanding insights about those audiences to find those meaningful ways to connect with them. And then I think it is about really doing the due diligence of understanding the impact, the business impact of what you're doing in market and how that's driving growth for your organization. So I think the marketers that are going to win are the ones who are going to be brave enough to work on trying to figure out how to measure appropriately and go beyond fluff metrics like I got this CPM or this click-through rate or this landing page rate or this even video completion rate. Like really thinking about what does that mean for the business? What's the value that it's driving? And you really do have to dig in for the insights, even in campaign performance data, to understand that as well, to know where to place your bets. So I think it's really, you have to look harder for those insights to really be able to make that case and translate it into business speak.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched on something there. I think people underestimate the power of research. Yes. And it's an area where, we do research.
Yeah.
Okay. You can move the levers up and down on everything else. research is included in that.
Yes,
If you
yes.
come more informed than you have been, if you come with a better articulated argument, that could be a game changer. So
Absolutely.
like the sweat equity and working harder if you don't necessarily have all the money, that can be any point in the end-to-end creation of great marketing. So don't sell that short.
100%. And also, I think that it's actually we're finding ways to do the research more efficiently and more effectively by using AI.
Absolutely.
And we're actually in the process of building some tools at Goodway Group that allow us to be able to do that research quickly, really efficiently, getting to those insights so much faster. Now, sometimes you end up with what I lovingly like to call an AI, you get Whitney Houston AI, which is, it's not right, but it's okay. And so you have to really make sure that you're not stopping at the Whitney Houston version, but you're really pushing to make sure that it's finding something that's going to give you a better insight on your audience or what you can do in your marketing better. But I think the idea of research being cumbersome or not nimble enough or not fast enough for these times where marketers really do have to be agile and adaptable really quickly, AI is making that so much more accessible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that notion that it is a slog or slow moving or something, it's a little bit outdated.
Yeah.
Guys, this is why you listen to the show. We're getting you back. You're welcome to the 21st century. Everyone stick around, because when we get back, we're going to bust down some silos. You want to bust down some silos when we get back, Stephanie?
I love busting down silos.
All right. Well, then we're all going to have to stick around, because we're coming back right after this. Ryan?
Yes?
Isn't it cool how Stephanie has mastered being brave in a data-driven world?
It is pretty cool.
And wasn't her definition of what an insight is the most masterful one you've ever heard?
Yes, I did find that to be quite masterful, although I'm wondering why you keep using that word.
I would just say, in the world of media, if I were to rank Stephani Estes on expertise, I'd put her at master level.
Yeah, I think you're going somewhere with this. I feel like maybe you've seen the ad copy already and know what we're talking about today.
I have no idea what you're talking about. What are we talking about today?
Yeah, well, obviously today, Mike, we're talking about the 2025 A&A Masters of Marketing Conference.
Ryan, did you just say the 2025 A&A Masters of Marketing Conference?
I did, Mike. Our annual conference. It's coming up once again. The biggest event in marketing is just around the corner.
Absolutely. This is where brave marketing decisions take center stage. There are going to be thousands of marketing leaders come this October who are convening to share the best practices, the tips, their concerns, their hopes. This is where it all goes down.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable event. I mean, 4 days. There's entertainment. Yes. There are incredible speakers.
Absolutely.
It's at a beautiful property. It's in Florida in
really
October.
Lovely.
It's pretty nice everywhere in October, I would say. But,
Indeed.
Maybe a little chilly in the Northeast where we are. So it'd be great to escape to beautiful Orlando if you can. I mean, if you're looking for a marketing event, this is the one.
This is literally the one. It is time to sharpen your strategy. It's time to challenge convention. And it is time to power this industry's agenda. It better sound good to you. So if it does sound good to you, I want you to check out more at ana.net/2025masters. And now, back to our show.
You're really mastering these ad reads.
I don't get the reference. And we're back. My guest, Stephani Estes, the Chief Media Officer of Goodway Group. So, data, creativity, relationships. You build an ideal marketer from the ground up. They're a master of all three. Historically, often, organizationally, they end up in different departments or in different cliques or in different whatever. They are not typically institutionally blended together, or at least not in a lot of places. How do you manage personalities among these siloed groups to kind of let you shine, but let this person do what they do? How do you manage that orchestration?
That's a great question. I tend to be very collaborative by nature. And so I really love to play in other people's sandboxes. Sometimes other people are like, oh, wait, hey, I'm not totally cool with you being my sandbox. But I think that I'm able to do my best work. And I think most marketers would agree that they do their best work when they're collaborating with others. And the nature of our work necessitates that. We have to collaborate with legal. We have to collaborate with finance. We have to collaborate with sales if we're, in the marketing part of the org. So I like to think about it in a couple of different ways, but one of my favorite analogies, and my team has heard me say this so many times, I think they're like, oh my gosh, we get it. But if you've ever watched a race, like a relay race, like in the Olympics, I love the Olympics. I'm like obsessed with them.
Oh my God,
but if you've ever watched that, they're not like chucking the baton at the next runner and they're like, I hope you catch it.
Correct.
I hope you take it.
Go.
They actually run alongside each other for about 100 yards. I think it's about 100 yards. And that is where we look at, if we think about the Venn diagram of the functions that we all have to partner together, whether that's media, analytics, social, like whatever the function is, you have to identify and define those 100-yard dashes. And that's where the teams need to come together, and you kind of take off your particular hat and you think about solving the problem holistically, but you work together, and it's a gray area. A lot of times people aren't comfortable with gray areas, but I think the more we can become comfortable in those 100-yard dashes, the better the work is that we do. So that's one thing that we really work hard at within my team, is defining what are the 100-yard dashes, what needs to happen, who needs to walk away with what, and what are the things that need to happen next as a result. And I think that makes a big difference when you think about it in those terms.
1,000,000%. And I like it kind of going on that gray area that, the person who has been working on it, who's kind of shepherding the transition, you're not an owner, but you're a guide.
Absolutely. Yes.
You get to say, this is what I've been doing.
Right.
This is why I think this is going to work. So here you go. Here's a watch out.
Yes.
So you have that feeling of ownership, but it's not mine.
Correct. Yeah, I love that idea that it's ownership, but it's not mine. I often think of, like, if you're writing, those like Mad Libs things, or like people like right? And you hand it to the next person. Like, if they don't have the context, if they don't understand what you have been thinking about or what you have been bringing to the table, then the story gets very disjointed and or sometimes in our parlance of when we're like putting a presentation together, we call it a Franken deck, right? Because it's like, oh, you can tell where this person came in and put theirs in, and then this person came and put theirs in. So I think it's also about, bringing it back to that race analogy. It's about like understanding the entire course before you can really understand where those handoffs are. Also, because I'm a lover of mixed metaphor, I'm going to throw another one in here.
Really hoping you would.
I just can't stop myself. We also think about it as like, what are you bringing to the table?
Yep.
And so if you think about like a potluck, everybody kind of needs to know what they're bringing to the potluck. If you don't plan it out, you might end up with, like, I don't know, like somebody brings Baja cuisine and somebody brings Italian. Like those two might not go together.
8 desserts and an appetizer.
I mean, I would go to that.
I was about to say that's a terrible.
But if everybody brought, I don't know, so
salads, 8 salads. Let's go with 8 salads.
Sure. You need to know what you're bringing to the party. You need to know what you're bringing to the table. And I think that is oftentimes we don't include enough of that visibility, whether you want to call it the visibility of the race course, whether you want to call it the visibility of the potluck menu. We don't give that visibility to the entire team. And then it becomes very difficult and very obvious in the outcome that nobody was fully on the same page.
Yes. And I think the idea behind managing personalities is you don't want to do it without any kind of layer of organization or culture or things helping. Because then you really are just keeping the strong people at bay from the more meek people and introverted people, where as everybody knows what the entire outline is, now you don't really have an excuse not to be getting in where you fit in. Yeah, I think that it empowers people to be part of the process. I mean, how easy is it if somebody puts something on your desk? How easy is it to be like, oh, well, okay, well, I'll just like check the boxes I have to check and then Yeah.
But if you understand the bigger picture, the bigger vision, I mean, you think about purpose-driven companies, they're always like everybody has to buy into the vision and buy into that. If you buy into the vision of the project that you're doing, if you buy into the vision of the campaign, then whether you're in the creative team, whether you're in the analytics team, whether you're in the media team, you know how to come together in service of that larger goal.
I love it, and I was secretly hoping that we'd be getting back to relay races and potluck dinners. So I want for nothing right now. But
I'm so glad.
We have more questions, so we're going to keep going.
Okay.
So you have such a great grasp on data and kind of the key to really using it to your advantage. From your lens at Goodway Group, is there a foundational misunderstanding that a lot of marketers have about data? Is there something that you've seen recur over and over in your time?
So I think one of the biggest things that marketers get wrong about data is that everyone's like, I got to have more data. I got to have more data.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we try to encourage people to think about is if you're not going to do anything with that data, you probably don't need it. Like if you don't need, I think a lot of times it's also like, let's measure all the things. And look, I love to measure things as much as the next person. But if I'm not going to make a decision based off of that, what I learned from that measurement, I've really kind of just wasted some effort. And so I think it's about being really purposeful about what it is that you want to understand, what it is that you want to learn, and what actions you're going to take as a result of having that data. Now, there's kind of two sides of this coin. Sometimes you can think you can be really purposeful and say like, I really want to prove like this hypothesis. You do have to be careful that you don't like let the data or your bias kind of get into where the data is going to take you. You don't want to jump to a preconceived notion. But I also think you have to trade that off with, you also don't want to go on a fishing trip. Like you don't want to try to boil the ocean or whatever water-based analogy you want to use there. You need to have an idea of what you're looking for and what information you want to ask. And I think we also need to ask better questions of the data. So I think a lot of times people are like, well, I just need to know how is my marketing working? Well, that's a very broad question.
Yes.
I actually yesterday had one of my favorite things to do with my colleagues. We just sort of had a whiteboard session where we were like mapping things out. And I was with our head of analytics and data and our head of investment. And we were talking about how to create measurement. And it was sort of like, what if we could have like thousands of segments that we are running all at one time, and we're going to see what pops to the top, and we're going to try to do this measurement. And it's like on the face, like, yes, let's test those things. Let's find those things. But when you look at like, okay, but if we really want to measure it properly, we're going to have to build a very complex mousetrap to be able to measure all of those different segments properly. And I think it's like, okay, well, let's not scrap that idea, but let's think about how we can make it more actionable and more action oriented. So like, instead of just like, let's find thousands of different audiences that we might want to test. Let's think about those audiences more purposeful. Is this an acquisition audience? Is there a part of this acquisition audience that we think makes them particularly relevant? Are there signals that we have about this audience that make them more likely to convert? And can we start to kind of like test and learn against those? So I think going in, having a really clear purpose and what you want to measure and what you're going to do about it later. Because if the answer is it's just an interesting factoid, like that's not enough.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I've seen it so many times that people looking at the data, they want to see a this or a that. And this is an audio medium, so I should say. They're looking for a huge spike or a huge dip.
Yes.
And that is not analytics.
Yes,
like the data is not going to do the work for you.
Correct.
You need that curiosity.
Yeah.
You need to take a scientific look at it.
Absolutely.
I really keep coming back to that. I think it's a great guide for marketers that they wouldn't necessarily come to naturally. You know, it's the creative, ephemeral, emotional. It's like, but let's approach it with discipline.
Absolutely.
You know?
And I think also, I mean, because we can't go 5 minutes without talking about AI.
No,
right?
have to.
Not in our industry.
Honestly, I'm glad that you brought it up. I may have been fired for
because
not
you were
talking
like, we haven't talked about it in a minute. We got to bring it back up.
We've got to.
I think this is a great place of where AI is so useful, because if you
Mhm.
think about the amount of data, like to spend human resources crunching all of this data to try to uncover the observations, that's not a good use of a human's time. It's a
Right.
great use of AI's time.
Yes.
And so one of the things that we are working to do within our measurement, and we're using generative AI around this, is let's let generative AI analyze all of the data that we want to parse through, and then give us the observations.
Yep.
And then as the human element, we can look at that and say, I think the insight here is this. And you can ask AI, you can query those things for insights. You're still going to get some of that Whitney Houston stuff where it's not quite right, but it's good enough. But that's where the human element, I think, can really come in. And so I think it's also like when you're thinking about data and you're trying to think about how can we make the best use of that, and you're also thinking about AI, like put those two together. It's like peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I love that we kind of came to this spot, because I think we need to be clear about what AI can do, can't do, should do, shouldn't do.
Yeah.
And that is a really perfect way to combine the data and observations that are going to power more accurate, more resonant marketing with the human bravery and that je ne sais quoi of our beautiful imperfections.
Yeah.
That's where it all comes together, and
really
just
does.
the good stuff is the result.
Totally. Absolutely.
Stephani, I think we did it again. They say lightning doesn't strike twice.
But it just did.
It just did.
It just did.
Thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure having you on Scope.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Let's do it again sometime.
Oh, let's do it again. Yes, absolutely. Third time.
Boom. I've heard it's a charm. Well, friends, here we are. Another episode of On Scope, the marketing podcast, is in the books. I promised a good time, and thanks to my guest, I delivered. Big shout out to Stephani Estes, Chief Media Officer of Goodway Group, for breaking down a myriad of subjects, but paramount, the best definition of what an insight really is and how we really get to it that I've ever heard. My marketer friends, it's time for you to put that to good use. As a reminder, if you have a topic or guest that you'd like to see on a future episode, we'd love to hear from you. That email, onscope@ana.net. And as always, here is your moment of marketing meditation. Take a deep breath, relax your shoulders, and consider the following from Brené Brown. You can choose courage or you can choose comfort, but you cannot choose both. Think on that, and I'll see you next week.
This has been a presentation of ANA Studios.